is the one on the throne, Jesus, holy. You are. He is worthy of praise, honor, and glory. So we sing, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. There's just no one like
All right, y'all. Welcome to the final chapter in the series. I was calling these workshops, aren't really workshops. I'd love to hear just before we dive in. Today's going to be a rather spicy one, also very, very nuanced, which I feel is very important, especially if you're feeling the call from Christ and truth, and it's leading you to dismantle everything previous to this version of you. Sometimes we tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater and bypass and um, idolize. And um, there's a lot of interesting, what's the word I'm looking for? Expressions in the New Age to Jesus kind of movement that's going on right now, which is, at its core, incredible. And from my point of view, there's also a lot of delusion. So I'm going to talk about some of that today. But before that, I just want to hear in the chat, and I'd love to see your faces if some of y'all are on. Um, what have you taken away so far? Like, what's in a sentence or two, and you can just put it in as a text for now. What is how has this impacted you, or what are you receiving? What are you taking away? What's alive based on your experience thus far? Because a lot of you have been with me that I could see since day one, which was just a couple days ago. There we go. Some faces. Clarity. Beautiful. Hi, Chloe. What's up, Ian? We got some circle members here. It confirmed things in my heart that I believe were true. Yeah, it's beautiful. How seeking is essentially living outside of your design. Absolutely, Lexi. Yep. Restorative. Yeah. I'm loved just as I am. Yeah. Yeah. Kayla. Yeah. The rearisen for the atonement to redeem us of our true nature. Amen. Feels like years have passed since day one. I'm personally just feeling embodied and confirmed on my journey so far. Less Coco. Is that like let's go? Like less Coco. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of gangster. You having done research into what my heart already knows lets me stand in fuller faith. Yeah, that I don't need to doubt. The text helps. Yeah. And man, Ian, we could always jam on this a little more in the circle, but this is I literally gave you a crouton. I mean, the deeper I go, the more it blows my mind. I mean, on a daily. Um, Peace, self-forgiveness, confirmation, and trusting my unique walk with God. More compassion for myself and others, reverence and infinite love for Jesus. Yeah, amazing, amazing, amazing. Really happy about that. All this. My attachments show me where I doubt God. God, God will love and provide up one letting go. Right, exactly. Exactly. Okay, well, let's get started. I'll first say a couple things. I think I said this in the last session. It's been said God wrote two books, the Bible and the book of nature or the book of life. Now, what's the first book? It's like you can't prove to someone God wrote anything. That's an improvable thing, right? Because obviously men are writing it. So we say God inspired. Um, so I don't like stand to prove God inspired this. I stand to prove that Jesus his life, what he did, who he said he was, his death and resurrection is a real historical documented event. And therefore, other events written in a historical context within the Bible are true. Now, what are the implications of that? Doesn't really matter if you believe it's God inspired or not. It's totally good to believe that. And for the most part, I believe, it is, but it's not like your faith needs to, or your understanding or what's going to change your life is, God wrote this. Um, so is it inspired? Yes, probably. Does that actually matter in terms of what are the main things? And I'll speak in my personal experience. What are the main things that will change your heart? Well, it's the New Testament. It's Jesus's life, death, and resurrection. I mean, that's the main thing. If that was pulled out, we wouldn't have Christianity, right? And in my experience, everyone that's really honest ends up at Jesus in their search. They're really honest. A lot of people aren't honest and they don't want to look at it. And they watch one podcast by Billy Carson and go, oh, see, look, the Emerald Tablets, which were never actually discovered, says that this actually happened. And Jesus is just an incarnation of Thoth. And trust me, guys, I used to buy into all of that. So I'm also really well educated on that stuff. Okay. I could outline, I've listened to the Emerald Tablets. I know the whole story. Okay. Inky and Enlil, the whole thing. So if you if you don't want to be honest, you'll take that as surface level justifications and you'll stay in a seeking kind of delusional place. And it's mostly fueled by pride, but also by fear. And that's why it's also innocent, because all fear is based on a misunderstanding of truth. The innocence is in the misunderstanding, or you could say the innocence is in the ignorance. And so often, life, God has to bring to you a moment where you have to go back to the foundation that your life is built on. This is why in the circle, our root cause healing program, we start at the very foundation. What are your answers to what is God? What is my relationship and understanding of God? Who am I? What's my purpose? What's the source of all my suffering? And knowing all that, we know, okay, what's the source of happiness and healing? Everyone has answers to those questions. The question is, are they answers that were just spoon fed to you? Or have you went back and consciously questioned, wait, where did I get this? Is this actually true? Because if from conception of that identity that gets formed, which Jesus re-identifies, we are re-identified through him, that identity, everything downstream, what I'm feeling, what I most commonly think about, what I do, and then the chronic illnesses in my body all come back from that core sense of self, because the body is always going to follow the mind. I mean, we have actual science that proves this now, that the body, then the organ is the end result of an event that happens in the psyche, and Christianity would probably even go as far as say soul. So the understanding the book of life is also a big part of this. This is what the course, the circle is going to be on. So I just wanted to give you guys that frame. Before I go into, I'm kind of going to go through like some myth busting, some clarifying, things like heaven, hell, yoga, demons, spiritual warfare, all the buzzwordy stuff. Um, I'm just going to say a little bit about the walk and what that means. And then all the clarification will kind of point to what does it look like to be responsible or to mature spiritually, but really just as a human through this lens, right? So, number one, what does the gospel of Jesus Christ, the undiluted gospel of Jesus Christ, what does it give us in terms of a context? And I've said this before, if you want your life to change, you don't change the contents of it. I don't rearrange cups and glasses and then go, okay, am I going to be happy now? But I think somehow if I do that with relationships and money, it's going to work. So I don't try to rearrange contents. I change context. Context is who am I? What's the purpose? What's God? Right? All those big questions that give me a different context, which then gives my life meaning and purpose and value inherently. Then I start to live from that place rather searching to get to that place. Right? So it gives us the context. It gives us a shared purpose. right? On earth as it is in heaven. Love God and your neighbor with all your heart. These are very simple, but incredibly profound and difficult, right? So if my context is, okay, I'm here to live on earth as it is in heaven, to establish God's kingdom, which the lived experience of being in the kingdom is authenticity. That's the lived physical experience of being, quote, in the kingdom. Because authenticity is the absence of separation and fear and guilt and shame. It's the absence of what causes you to live outside of your design and sin. So when you're living in its absence, fear is impossible. If you knew who walked beside you, fear would be impossible. So the result in the world is I'm making choices from a place of authenticity. What's a sign of authenticity? I'm not doing something for an end result to fill up something that I lack. That's inauthenticity. And this is every single moment. I mean, think about the implications here. It's like, why am I taking these supplements? Oh, I need them, or I'm going to be in scarcity. I'm not trusting how my body is going to work without them. What is it actually driven by? My post, how I put my body online, what motivates me in relationship. Every single choice point is either an extension of the kingdom or a call to return home in a way that's going to actually make you only feel more homeless. And so, in terms of what does it look like on a day to day, there is no instruction manual. There can't be an instruction manual. In fact, even the commandments are a spontaneous pattern that forms on the other side of someone being authentic, meaning there are traits that stem from the love of God, the indwelling Holy Spirit of truth that you are now living from, the fullness of God in you. There are patterns that are observable. Helping the poor. You know, how many of us are driving down the street, we look over and see a homeless person and we feel shame. You know how much shame they're feeling? And you're feeling shame. And I've had that. Not as much recently, but it's like I remember catching myself one day, why can't I look this person in the eyes? And now for me, I always look that person in the eyes. And I go, man, because I put them in the box of they're homeless, not that they are also sons and daughters of the Most High. They have dignity just because of who they are. Wait, well, how would that change this interaction? So the walk is, am I walking in truth? Am I walking in the identity that says I am who he says I am? Or am I searching for it? And by letting that be your inquiry, this is why we are still asked to do inquiry and have self honesty. I'm going to talk about that and how sometimes that gets bypassed in this movement. Actually, I would say often. It's not that you have to be perfect. I'm not perfect. There's times I bypass things, but we need to put a spotlight on it. So when I'm walking daily in truth, again, I'm not holding on. This is a great little signifier. I'm not holding on to a specific expectation or form of insistence that I need to create a certain result or outcome in order to feel or be what I already am in Christ and in truth. So it's like if I'm doing this to gain a sense of safety, I'm saying, God, Lord, you're 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 lacking today. You're not giving me all of the things, or I'm not that. And you see, it's when I exclaim, whether it's consciously or not, I'm not who you say I am. That's the source of all suffering, because then we have to play it out. And that's inauthenticity. And inauthenticity and suffering are synonymous. They're the same thing. So if I care about what you think, if I don't want to be rejected, if I'm people pleasing, I mean, the list goes on and on. We can look at the symptoms. But what we don't want to do is take those symptoms and then look at let's say like the 10 commandments or even the Sermon on the Mount or the parable of the Good Samaritan, where that outlines a moral code. We don't want to look at these symptoms and go, I'm bad. Now let me just do good based on this moral code. This is the shallow approach to Christianity. This is the just do better. What was the purpose of Jesus's life? To show us, even if you don't do better, it doesn't change how I feel about you. But that should, in an effortless manner, make you, quote, do better, but not from a place of guilt, from a place of love. So instead of going, oh, look, here's where I fall short, now let me do good. Like I said, these do goods are patterns, are side effects of a previous state that is unencumbered by lies, that is the indwelling of love and truth. And as a natural side effect, I follow commands, not because it's, I'm going to go to hell if I don't, not because I need to be a good boy, but because the love that I've inherited I didn't have to do anything for it, I didn't have to earn it or deserve it, is so profound that I want to do it as a thank you. That I want to do it as, wait, it's actually in my best interest to live this way. Because when I extend love, I reinforce my true identity. Every time I act from it, I reinforce it. So it's selfish and selfless. Every time I read it here, living by the flesh, every time I deny my flesh, which something that's fleshy, you could say is like a fleshy desire. It's a worldly yearning for something to fill me. Every time that I question that and come back into who I am, which you could say prayer or inquiry is that process, instead of sourcing what I think I'm lack, I become the source. And when I say I mean the living spirit and indwelling love that my identity in Christ overflows moment by moment when I'm living in alignment with it. So don't think moral codes came first. No, what comes first is this state of being that is based in truth that produces patterns. Patterns are secondary, state of being is primary. And what creates that state of being is our identity. Right? Because we have been given free will. You can disagree. You're allowed to disagree with who you are, but it hurts and it never works. Okay, so that's the first thing. It gives us, number one, on earth as it is in heaven. We have the commandments. And lastly, what I'll say about that is typically what happens is in the absence of all of that pain and suffering I've been carrying up to this point, I free up my psyche for, for characteristics that are germane to the human spirit versus the human animal. Instead of being motivated to survive and get and seek and fuck and reproduce, like all of the, pardon my language, but this is like the animal, right? Trying to get this like picture of this, that's the animal. Has all of these animal drivers. So as that starts to dissolve, now we have spirit, the human spirit driving the ship. I mean, the main driver of animal is safety and reproduction. And so that's another way to say, okay, why am I doing this? Is it to reproduce? Is it for safety? Well, we know we're coming from human animal. Human spirit, which arises or expands in the absence of being dominated by human animal, looks like inspiration, passion, honesty, transparency, self-control, right? The fruits of the spirit as well, outlined in the Bible. And so for all of us, there will be a gravity towards something in your life that it's not like everyone just needs to start preaching about Jesus, right? That gravitational pull, you're not creating that. I can't not be passionate about what I'm doing in this exact moment. I can't find a switch to turn that off. That's not something I created. It's something I discovered. This is what it means that God placed something on your heart. You don't have much of a choice to be drawn to what you're drawn to. I mean, just try not being excited by something that excites you. It can't make sense. Now you can deny it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. So all of us, there's a gravity towards a certain expression, and it could be art, it could be poetry, it could be writing, it could be speaking, it could be dancing, it could be building homes. It could be seen as something that's so not spiritual, but the energy in which you're coming from is the living example and testimony. It's your ministry. It's extending the kingdom because you're saying yes to who God says you are and says, this is why you're needed. And the way that you're needed is a puzzle piece that fits perfectly into the entire picture of the cosmos. Likewise, the cosmos is designed perfectly to support you in that shape. And this is when life becomes a lot more magical. I'm not motivated. How am I going to be safe and make money? Right? In God, in Jesus, I don't need any of that. You could be on the street and be richer than the person in the penthouse. So when you're coming from human spirit, it's a totally different life. How do you know you're coming from human spirit? Look at the fruits. People can lie. People can rent a car and go, look, man, God has blessed me with this Bentley that I'm renting. I think that was Billy Carson, by the way. We can pray for him later. So, by the fruits, right? Good roots, good fruits. The goat. Beatrice just learned what the goat finally means. Congratulate. That's an initiation. Okay. Is this making some sense so far? Okay. So I'm just going to get into a little list here. Okay. Let's start with the New Age to Jesus meme, right? Like anything, there's a mainstream version. Let me give you this context. When you have I'll put it this way. Every trend or movement operates in a bell curve, right? You have the majority kind of in the center here, and then you have the outliers on each side. What I see happening in the world right now is the majority is in this new age. It's a combination of either really, I'd say, outdated or dogmatic forms of religion that are what's one signifier? They're still in wars, holy wars, and it's like this anti-truth justified by religious conflict. There's steady conflict, right? Maybe racism, bigotry, all those things. So we know there's, again, look at the fruits. And then you have the new age. You have like the Oprah Winfrey's and the celebrities and Hollywood and this like super dark, satanic, weird thing. You have that full end of people. And then you have people that don't know that's what it is, that are just dabbling because we live in the age of confusion in this postmodern era where your truth is the truth. So we have this really confused majority. The second bell curve was people started really learning about the body and trauma. Going, wait a second, all of this stuff, I'm not finding what I'm looking for here. Maybe I need to go deeper into the body, work on my trauma. Now everyone's talking about trauma and vulnerability, right? Repeat what I just said. I don't know which one you're referring to. So we go from this like the old world conflicted, hyper religious, hyper dogmatic, hyper legalistic religions that also include the like satanic, Luciferic, which Satanism it means the inversion of truth. You know, the upside down cross is just the inversion of truth. Um, I'm not going to go too much into it, but you have like Hollywood is a good example. Diddy, all that stuff that's coming out right now. This is not new. And then you have this New Age occult where all New Age is a amalgamation of many different religions. Some very ancient, and there's truth there too, because there's truth. Truth's going to show up in all religions and spirituality. But it's kind of like just I'm gonna cherry pick, and the trap there often is self-aggrandizing. I'm God. I'm creating everything, right? And the I that they're referring to is, remember in our first session, that triangle structure, that ego. So that's actually what inflates, and that's the wall between them and God and truth. Whereas in the hyper legalistic religions, there's so much guilt and shame and such a shadowy underbelly that it's self deprecation or self devaluation. So you have these extremes. Then from there, you go, yeah, legalistic. Yeah, you guys ask questions if you need to know. Legalistic means essentially the law is your God and way to salvation. It's not grace. It's like if you don't pray 10 times a day, make this sacrifice and this offering, you're going to go to hell. So you have to follow, you know, they call it the law in order to get into heaven, which has a lot of problems. And that's not the message of Jesus. Jesus wasn't like, hey, I died for your sins, but only if you follow this law. Oh, you know, so Jesus did the opposite. He said, you're saved by grace. And then if you love me, which you should, if you're saved by grace, you'll follow the law. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. Jesus clearly says he didn't come to abolish the law. Well, he redefined the law and he also fulfilled the law. When I say the law, I mean in the Torah, who they prophesied him to be. But he redefined the law. One example is, you know, it was like if you, and you see this in countless stories, is uh, you know, the Pharisees were condemning this woman. Yeah, exactly, Pierre, condemning this woman saying, oh, well, she committed adultery. And then in that moment, he offered this nuance. He goes, well, even lusting over a woman, essentially, even just thinking about it is adultery. So who here has never done that? You know, if you can stay and judge her if you've never done that, and everyone left. So he says these two things are equal. And that was new to them at the time. So he completely elevated the standard. So we'll keep going. So that's that first bell curve. And then the second bell curve is oh well, you know, trauma is real. Conflict shocks, biological shocks, all of that is real. It does change your hormones, which does change your perception, which does change your chemistry, which does can lead to chronic conditions. And so then it's this understanding of trauma, right? But this can lead us to the addiction to things like breath work, nervous system work, you know, where it's like, okay, every day just to deal with this, I just have to breathe and soothe myself, and or I have to breathe really heavy and scream and cry and shake. Um, or I just have to listen to 100 million affirmations and then I'll be fine. And this is like, you know, we've all been through it, but this is like kindergarten spirituality. I wouldn't even call it that. I would just call it a trap. It's an actual trap because the identity is not changing. In fact, the identity of powerlessness, there's something wrong with me, is typically reinforced. Now, can healing come from these things? 100%. I'm not throwing all of it out, but I'm talking about the shadow part, the shadow aspect, right? Now, the value of this second curve is if you actually, this isn't, this does happen, but this isn't about just going to Tulum and doing ayahuasca and go, I'm enlightened now. Okay. That happens in this bell curve too, but which is the second kind of wave. Um, if you actually have done, who here, just raise your hand, has done real trauma informed work or somatic sensing that's helped you process trauma and you've noticeably healed, resolved, changed your body, your physiology, your relationship? Who's experienced that? Yeah. Yeah. So this has its place, right? We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater because this is God wrote the book of life, of biology. Now we're discovering how trauma affects the body and we're discovering different modalities on how to resolve it. And there's not, if you're guided to that, there's nothing wrong with it. It's again, just like with the legalism piece, it's about where are you coming from, not the form it takes. It's not this one's demonic and this one's okay because of the form. One of them you're stretching in a certain pose, the other one you're stretching in a different pose. One is demonic, one is not. No. It's where are you coming from? What's the energy that's informing the form? Sure, if I stretch in a certain pose and I start praying, okay, Kali, you're the one and true God. You can, give me everything that I lack. It's not true. So in that sense, what do we say demonic is? It's just the inversion of truth, right? So if I'm using any modality to fill something only God can fill, well, then yeah, I'm not in right relationship with it. It doesn't mean the thing is demonic. It just means there's not truth there. The nuance is in order to have an experience with like an entity, if an entity or demon, whatever you want to call them, you have to be outside of the truth. You have to be in your inauthenticity. You have to be believing you're someone you're not and living that out and playing that out, living outside of your design and sin. So this is where it's like, oh, it's demonic because then people do that have these dark experiences. It's not because of the modality. They could have done that with any modality and they would have had a similar experience because the identity is always going to prove itself right. I'm not good enough. If there's something wrong with me, if I'm not safe, it's always going to eventually prove itself right. Does that make sense? So this is what I mean by okay, we're in new age, right? Then we're in this new age category. If you didn't do the deeper somatic work that from my point of view is the book of understanding the book of life that God created, our design, how things work in us, wasn't a random creation, it was intentional. Then we're just learning from that. And then we're learning ways of responding to what's happening and how trauma reinforces itself and whatnot. Now, if you went really deep into that and then you went to Christ, you're probably going to have a really deep relationship with Christ and be able to hold a lot of nuance because a byproduct of going really deep into trauma, and people say in Christianity, I don't believe this. Oh, don't go looking at your trauma. You're just digging up demons. Just bypass it. Once you have Jesus, you don't need to. Now, here's the problem with that. If you're holding on to an identity or a context that is at odds with who Jesus says you are, and you don't even know it's there, it is by definition going to keep reproducing itself. We know from neuroscience a belief system over time goes deep and wide in the brain. And when something happens and you have a very ingrained way of perceiving what's happening, AKA giving it meaning, it's going to default to some of the pathways that are most ingrained. Same in German New Medicine. If you're shocked and you can't digest a situation and you get constipated, and that's been something you've been experiencing since you were 4 years old, then when similar or even slightly unsimilar events happen, your psyche might be trained to, oh, it's always going to affect my digestion. Every time something like this happens, it affects my digestion because you have this groove. And we know biology always takes the path of least resistance. So once you know that, you go, okay, I could just not look at it and listen to worship music and feel good. But I'm also called to take these thoughts captive and bring them to God and the Holy Spirit of truth. And what happens, what revelation is going from seeing what's not true to what is true, right? And now, obviously, Jesus is the ultimate truth. So when we open in that way, number one, on a biological level, we're completely relaxing our nervous system, not through a technique, not through a tool, through love, which is the ultimate nervous system, and connection. That's the ultimate nervous system relaxer. And in that moment, we are primed to receive a new insight. I mean, quite literally, certain parts of our brain, like the amygdala, will shut down and other brains, part of the brain will open. And the way I interpret the brain is as like an antenna. So we're actually letting ourselves get into a receptive state while we are in Jesus, En, dwelling within, abiding within, where we can see the truth. So if you didn't have that experience before you came to Jesus, I'll give you an example. Like one thing one of my coaches used to do, an amazing coach, very educated and good at what he does. I saw so many miracles working with him, or people just having so much spontaneous healing and whatnot. He would put you in front of a room, and it was called Deepest Truth. And you just had to share everything you're most ashamed of, everything you want to hide from the group, and you share until you completely empty. And you're in a room full of strangers. And he could see if you're holding back. So it's like, oh, you're holding back. And it's like, he's right there. And it's like, wow. And prior to that, let's just say I couldn't look people, those people in the room, I couldn't look them in the eye too long. Anyone here have a problem with that? Eye contact? Well, it's usually, not always, but it can be because of shame. So all of a sudden, I'm able to look people in the eyes. I'm here. I've arrived. Like anything, and a lot of people are walking around like that and not knowing why they feel disconnected. I mean, I didn't even know what I didn't know, right? So when I see the shallow new ager that didn't go through those forms of initiation, where it's like, when I say initiation, it's really just getting really honest with yourself. But the same way we're called to have a marriage and it be witnessed, because the power, number one, of our testimony, but the power of it being witnessed keeps us from hiding. It's like the public declaration has to pull us out of hiding, because we're literally have to come out of hiding. The same way that can be a tool to come out of hiding. Okay, if I can do that in front of this room, I can do it in front of anyone. And I'm going to walk in the world differently after that. Right? Now, I've met Christians, and this is not a judgment, it's just an observation, that had a shallow version of New Age, where it's just like, I'm just doing some tarot cards. I get Reiki here and there. I go to psychics. There's nothing in there that is going to transform your identity, right? Is going to actually like bring you into a deep sense of love and connection and transformation. And then they go to Jesus and they have a real experience, but then there's a shallowness to where they can't even hold eye contact with me. But then they'll look at some of these practices of transparency, openness, really just intimacy that we've been so afraid of because of our conditioning, resolving the stories that go on in our mind, right? And they call it all demonic. So that's where there's some disconnect with me. It's like, okay, it's demonic. Can we just sit down and can you look at me in my eyes for more than 5 seconds without feeling squirmy? That should be like a fundamental, again, if the indwelling spirit of the Lord is within you, what are you afraid of? Right? So this is just some very practical things. When you say judge someone by their fruits, a lot of times we're just watching a video and they're dropping facts and they're pointing at things and this and that. But it's like, what happens when you're in the same room with them? Like, are they present and open and available and there and honest? It's like these are the fruits. And sometimes you can't just see that on a video. So I'm going to close the chat 'cause I'm getting distracted. We'll do questions in a bit. Okay. So the in the short is shallow New Age creates shallow Christians. And sometimes that turns people away from Jesus because they're like, someone's like, man, I really love Jesus. And they're like, that's not the biblical Jesus. And it's like, where's it coming from? Maybe it's true, but where is it coming from? Remember, energy before the form, energy before form. That's what's important. If it's coming from fear and paranoia and anger, we're not operating in the spirit. And we can justify it and go, oh, well, we were told, we've been commanded to, you know, suss out, like religious legalism and mockery and all these things. But again, what is the spirit behind it? That's really what matters. Now that's going to inform some of these other nuances. Okay. Oh, and then finally, I'll just end it with this section. Remember these little bell curves? I think the third bell curve right now are people reclaiming the truth and love of Jesus and God with nuance. Where we go, oh, wait, some of that trauma stuff is actually, it's a good practice if I feel a certain way to close my eyes and just feel it for a second. There's nothing wrong with that. you know, there's nothing wrong with someone asking me questions and helping me resolve and see something in a different way. It's like there's all of this is actually helpful, but I'm not using it to get to God. It's not like this is going to make me, save me. And where our relationship to it changes. So this third bell curve is our relationship to modalities and tools and teachers changes. We have what's the most high, Jesus Christ. And then we have useful tools that I'm motivated to explore for their own sake, because maybe there's curiosity or excitement or inspiration there. Ooh, this looks inspiring. I'm going to explore it. So where I'm coming from changes, and I don't have to throw everything out. I'm also not paranoid, and I can hold the truth of Jesus while actually using or exploring what I need to live by the Spirit every day the best that I can. Sometimes for me it's like something as simple as listening to a YouTube video that inspires me. There's actually no difference between that and doing Reiki. The difference is if you come to it and you're like, okay, I God can't is not going to heal me. You're doing the healing, Reiki person. You're the healer. You have the power. That's when it gets not disoriented. That's when it's not true. That's when there's delusion. There's no human on this planet that can walk up to me and heal me. Jesus even said, your faith healed you. Now, here's the paradox. Once I really start to know that, not just think it, I don't go to Reiki. Not because I'm afraid, but because I go, I'm not seeking the healing. So there is a natural kind of undoing that I've noticed in this third bell curve of it's not that this is bad, wrong, or I'm afraid of it. I just don't need it. Like anything in nature, when it's not needed, it dies off. So it's perfectly okay to just let that happen. And you can inform people, of course, if that's what you're called to do. Again, where is it coming from? anything that I think a human or anything in this world that can give me that is already mine through God, through Christ, the more I seek it, the more I push it away. So, yeah, that is the trap of the endless healing loop. And this is why it's so nuanced. Okay. I'm just going to check if there's any questions here. So this is good. I'm going to answer this real quick. How about the more you follow Christ, God, the bigger attacks of the enemy? So here's the nuance, okay? Think of it this way. You're this little dot, okay? And the love of God and Christ, you start to feel this expansion of love in your life, right? This expansion of awe. And that expansion goes in every direction. So, very often, when we become more aware of the truth, we also become more aware of what's not true. We might perceive that as an attack. The way I see it is I'm actually discovering what was already here, but was invisible to me because of this expanded perspective, which comes with truth. So not only am I going to expand in one direction, I may expand more. I may become aware of the influences and the attempts to hook you into believing you're someone you're not, which is mainstream media. It's a lot of movies, right? What do we hear in the mainstream? It's like, you need to become more, sexy and better looking and this. It's like all of that will only work if I'm not in my beloved identity. So I might become a lot more aware of them, but it's not like I'm capable of being attacked more. In fact, the opposite is true. I'm less available for attack than I've ever been because I'm not in agreement with who you think I am. And believe it or not, all forms of attack happen within the confines of agreement. So even if it's unconscious, right? If I'm holding on to I'm bad and I'm unworthy and I'm powerless, well, I'm the living invitation for, you could say, an entity or demon to prove that right. But the real entity in that case is me, in the sense of what I'm believing to be true is making me not myself. It's making me into an entity that's not me. So I'm available to have that interaction now. And see, when you understand that, like I said previously, it's not about learning how to win the war. It's about learning where I'm agreeing to war, which starts first as an internal war that I actually do have authority over. Why was Jesus never possessed? Why could they not control him at all? Because there's absolutely no war within him. He stood in the storm and he spoke a word, and peace and stillness came to the storm. Why? Because the peace and stillness inside of him. So the trap is, all right, we're going to gear up to win and fight this spiritual war. Well, what happens when you fight fire with fire? Everyone gets burned. What's fighting fire with water? Water is forgiveness, ultimately self-forgiveness. As I forgive and repent and live more in him, I literally become invisible to spiritual attacks, but I might become more aware of what's going on. In fact, I will become very aware. And it's like another veil lifting. So don't take that as a scary thing. Take that as a sign of your progress. Amen. Okay. All right, let's talk about yoga and crystals. What do y'all think I'm going to say about that? It's like if I'm going to do some stretching because it makes me feel good. I mean, there's studies that show you recover more from yoga than almost any other bodily modality. Like your body actually recovers. These strange positions actually force a kind of myofascial release. Emotions are held in the fascia. There's nothing wrong with stretching your body in a certain way. Now, if I'm going in and saying, this is how I'm going to be saved, go to heaven, this is going to fill something in me, then just like any other modality, I'm not in right relationship with it. Yeah. Same thing with a crystal. I don't need to throw out a rock. What grew the rock? The earth. The book of life is the rock. The God created that. I'm not going to throw that out. But here's the nuance. When I had that moment that I referred to in my apartment that took me to my knees, as a byproduct, naturally, I started looking at things in my house, my apartment, and go, I just don't need that. I actually did throw out little statues of Ganesha and whatnot because I'm like, this is cool, but it has no meaning now. It has what I just found is so great. It's like, eh. But this was a whole way of living. It was just very intentional. It was like, okay, as you step into the truth, you go, okay, where am I? What doesn't align? What doesn't resonate? And you just adjust. But it wasn't like the Crusades. It wasn't like burn the books, right? Okay, let's see what else we got here. Okay, I mentioned this a little bit before. Personal responsibility while being a Christian, or while, and I don't even like the term again Christian because of the connotation and how a lot of the churches ruin that word. Following Christ, what does it mean to live in personal responsibility? Do we need to ever do shadow work, any of that kind of stuff? Now, again, why are we doing it? If I think, okay, look, I'm broken and I need to fix myself, and this method of fixing myself is going to fix my brokenness, I'm going to keep proving to myself that I'm broken because it's not going to work, and I'm going to have to keep doing more. Now, if I do any work that helps me get to the identity of I'm broken and see that it's not true, and that leads me to truth, then that's not necessarily even a modality. That's just you moving into the truth in whatever way that you did. That will not lead to an addiction. That will lead to more truth and love and rest. Now, I do believe people on the path will ultimately be led to Jesus if they are really honest. And this is where we'll find the ultimate rest. But again, some people actually need to go through some of these modalities to find their way here. It's so again, what's the energy behind it? Am I addicted to the release? Am I trying to fix something in me? Or do I feel the same way I feel gravity towards something that I'm passionate about? Do I feel a gravity towards something and I don't have an agenda? I just go, okay, well, I am feeling called here. So, in the absence of the agenda, in the absence of lack and scarcity, am I called to this? Am I pulled to it? If it's a yes, I would say that's your authenticity, right? So go from there. Mhm. Yeah, deliverance. Again, if we um, have recontextualized, okay, changed the context of our suffering, but it actually hasn't penetrated us deeply, then we might do the same things we did in the new age as a Christian, right? I'm not saying that's all people, and there's some people that just do one or two deliverances and that's all they do. But if it becomes an addiction, it's a crutch, it's not coming from the truth, it's a coping mechanism, right? And I see this all the time, and this is something I also want to kind of call out a little bit. Is like, I saw this post. He goes, back in the day, depression, anxiety, these were all called spirits. And everyone's got it mixed up now. They think it's a chemical imbalance or this and that. No, they're spirits. Now, I can't deny there's not a spiritual aspect to everything. I think there's a spiritual aspect to everything. But I've seen my own brain scan of when I was depressed, and I've seen the markings on my brain scan that other people with depression, not just some of them, every single one with the depression that I had the same exact markings on their brain. And when they were interviewed, had the same exact theme of a conflict. They lost their territory, and then they had some sort of territorial anger. They couldn't keep invaders out. They had the same two marks, experiencing the same nature of conflicts. So to just say, oh, that's just a spirit, you just got to cast it out, is so ignorant. And you're not looking at the book of life. That depression is actually happening for you. It's happening for you. In my case, it was you are so overwhelmed with conflicts right now that your psyche is saying it's dangerous for me to go reclaim my territory. My territory at the time of the loss was a partner and work. So it's too dangerous to do that. And if you do, another man will kill you. That's how the primal body works, is how a wolf pack works, is how our biology functions. So the depression encourages me to rest and go inward for protection and to find safety, and to secure first my own territory, which is to heal the territory anger, to figure out my boundary issue. The moment I did that, all this energy returned to me that then helped me go get my territory back. So if you don't understand how our biology works, number one, you think depression is bad. You don't think it's happening for you. You don't think it's a very smart adaptation to shocking biological shocks, what people call trauma, but this is more specific. You go, it's a bad spirit. Now, it doesn't mean that in that state, am I actually in agreement to those kind of energies? Probably. Probably. But see, the top-down approach is, okay, get rid of the entity and then you'll resolve versus resolve the conflict and then the entity will have no power over you because you're opting in on some unconscious level. So no, it's not, if you study German New Medicine, if you study biology, you see every symptom is a healing phase symptom. Here's an analogy. If you've ever seen a fireplace and the one with the glass on the front, you close it. If you close it with the fire on over time, you get this really dark, like soot on the glass. Now, if you get a cleaner and you try to clean it off, almost no cleaner will get it off. It's essentially stains. But if you pick up some of the coal, some of the dust of the coal inside of the fireplace and rub it on the coal, it comes off effortlessly. Right? So what we think is the symptom and is bad or wrong is actually the resolution when we study biology. Now we're calling it a demon and an entity, and it's just from ignorance. Exactly. And then if we actually do that, we demonize our symptoms, because that's essentially what we're doing. What does that do with your relationship with your body? Probably scares the crap out of you. And that just fuels the whole spiritual warfare. You guys seeing this? Is this making some sense? My clients, they might have diarrhea. They celebrate when they have diarrhea. So do I. Or a sore throat. I've resolved. Yes. There's thankfulness. There's no fear. Well, that's the truth. That's all the fruits of the spirit. Because they really understand their biology. And a lot of them that have been through the circle also understand their identity. So there's just no reason to be afraid. There's no war. Come on. Okay, can you talk about how Babe put a good one in here? Spiritual warfare can actually work in your favor and bring you closer to the true identity. I think I know what you're saying, Babe. You want to say it another way? You can unmute. You mean like how can it be a catalyst? Kind of.
Yeah, I feel like like people see it from victim perpetrator dynamics. And
Hmm.
when you step out of that dynamic, it's all there for you, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. 100%. Yeah. I mean, I think that was really well said, but one way I'll reiterate it is to be in a kind of war or in a kind of oppositional relationship, you have to take a position. Now, you could be in the position of victim, it's happening to me, perpetrator, I'm the bad guy, or savior, I need to save the victim, right? Now, as long as you're in one of those positions, you're not in a position of power. You've already lost your posture and your identity. That's the core issue, right? Because nothing can affect you without permission. So, even if I'm confronted with an entity, some sort of demon just, appears in front of me, and my thoughts are, oh my God, I'm dead. Well, what's really frightening in that experience? Is it, an entity, or is it my thought I'm dead? You see, it's like the more I start to play into my thinking and believing, which comes from my identity, I'm going to reinforce this fearful, disempowering thing. But if I completely know who I am in that moment, number one, it probably wouldn't even happen. But number two, I can't believe those thoughts. They're not true. So now I'm just witnessing some sort of being or entity. And what becomes available is what's there in the absence of fear and even terror or powerlessness. It's what's there in the absence. I can actually be in a position of power and love. And that's, you know, there's a reason why the saying is when you are, um, when you are loving, like even in a romantic relationship, when you start to become very unconditionally loving towards your partner, they're either going to run towards you or run away, right? They'll run towards you if they can open and receive and experience that love as well. They'll run away if it scares the crap out of them. And this is what we see even when someone says the name Jesus Christ. Um, they just say the name. It's like everything stops because there's so much authority there. And again, it's not, remember, energy over form. It's not because of sounds, Jesus Christ. It's because of the energy from which that arises on behalf. Yeah, you're not demon possessed, Carter. Okay, I'm just seeing here. What do we have here? MCAS and weight gain. I'm not sure what MCAS is. 21. Okay, yeah. Oh, mast cell activation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about this another time. Essentially, you have tracks. So whenever these shocking events happened, whether it's the sexual abuse, the disownment, the judgment for getting divorced, the divorce itself, these are all shocking events. When your biology perceives a threat to your life, it will tag what is associated or even just what's in the room. So if you were eating something or even ate something and it was in your stomach and then boom, you had that shock, you could develop an allergy to the bread you just ate or to the pollen in the air or even to the person. Now your body goes every time you see that person, eat that food, sniff that pollen, boom, turn on mast cell activation, try to keep me safe, right? This is dangerous. So you'll have that response. So those are called, in GNM, those are called tracks. So as long as you keep stepping on those tracks, it's going to keep persisting. We have to go into those I'll put it in the context of this series. Every time we have a shocking moment, we have, until we start to see this, every time we are shocked. And what I mean by shocked is you're caught off guard, you're overwhelmed, and you're isolated. Those three criteria are met. It's like this is metaphoric. It's like a whisper from ego that says, see, you're not enough. You're not safe. You're in danger. You're bad. Or it would be, I'm bad. Okay. So in those, because if you look at let's say a deer, when the deer gets shocked, let's say it's being chased, as soon as the lion leaves, the deer just shakes it off and it's fine. So they're right back into the present moment. We have the ability to ruminate and replay that event because of the context we've given it. I'm in danger, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm not enough, and now I need to avoid ever feeling that again. So when we have that shocking event and we want to avoid it at all costs, we're now living in past and future a lot. And that's not our design, right? That's always going to be, that's anxiety. So we actually have to go back to those shocking moments for you to, in a sense, reclaim your true identity through forgiveness and through essentially communing in the truth, or you could say the Holy Spirit of truth, which my approach to that is inquiry. We're getting really still and we're finding these identities that disagree with who you really are, and you're forgiving them. And there's a very specific process I take you through. And then on the other side, you can resolve. So it is a bit of a process, but that's my response. Okay. So let's see what else we got here. Spiritual bypassing, I already talked about that. A spiritual bypass is just saying, look, something's coming up for me, but I don't need to look at it because either I have this new moon ceremony that I'm just going to write it on a piece of paper and let it go. Here's the thing. No one can let go of anything. Even that's too much effort. You're not doing the healing. You have free will. So you have to decide why you're holding on. You don't let it go. It's like if someone's sitting there, have you ever said this to a friend? They're like, yeah, I just feel like I'm a piece of crap. And you're like, just let it go. It's like, what? How? You don't let it go. You believe it's true for a good reason. You have to investigate why, on some level, it makes sense for you to choose that, or you might even want it. I know that sounds paradoxical, but as soon as you see that and you see that you don't need it, you see it doesn't make sense, you see it's not who you are in your own way, it will let go of you. It will leave you the same way anything else. It's starved of attention. It's not chosen anymore. So a spiritual bypass is something coming up and just going, oh no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to look at that. I have Jesus. Well, yeah, if it's causing you to live in a way that's not true, then you're still in disagreement essentially with the gospel. And all of us are. This happens to all of us. So we do have to be active, you know. This is a good one. You know, I hear this a lot. It's like Krishna, Buddha, aren't they all the same? No, they're not the same. No one else on the planet has died and resurrected in a historical context. No one. There's no eyewitness testimony. The resurrection is very different. You hear this like Jesus mythicism. Well, all these cultures died and resurrected. You know, all these different people died and resurrected. Majority of them, it's a spiritual resurrection. A lot of them resurrect to a different realm. I think like Osiris. Some of them resurrect, but not with all their body parts. But none of it's like if the theme is death and resurrection, yes, that's a common theme. As long as we die, there's going to be an archetype that is eternal about dying and the afterlife. So the fact that this realm, there is a physical death, there has to be an archetype or a theme. Another way of saying an archetype is like a collective, like meme of the afterlife or coming back from death. So that's just like a built-in idea that will show up in like mythical poetry or mythology and this and that. But see, it's the differences that make the difference. There's no person that ever was resurrected that claimed to be the one and only true God like Jesus did. None of them had disciples. None of them predicted their own death and resurrection and fulfilled, you know, X amount of prophecies. So when you look at the differences, you realize the differences make the difference, not one similarity. So no, Krishna, Buddha, they did not make a divinity claim, and there wasn't some sort of historically reliable, or at least evidence for their resurrection with multiple eyewitness testimony. Okay, Gnosticism. Just a couple things here. In short, the Gnostic, not pantheon, that's what I'm looking for, ontology, which is the study of how things came into being. Now, I'm not a pro on Gnosticism. I've, dove in a little bit. They essentially believe this physical realm is, in a sense, like a trap. Like this has been created. The demiurge, by the demiurge, which is kind of like the nemesis, and the physical realm is the realm of illusion and untruth, and the spiritual realm is the realm of truth. And the means by which we get here to there is through gnosis or knowledge. And, this is a really enticing one because it's like, oh, I can learn all of this sacred knowledge and then earn my way into the truth. Now, why is this mutually exclusive to Christ? Because Christ said, no, you actually don't need any knowledge of anything, really. You just need to accept what I've done for you. And by grace, you will be filled with love unspeakable. And if we're looking at what ascension is, that's actually the path. There's nothing greater than the love of God. And so instead of you ascending to go get the love of God and the truth, God descended to you. You see the opposite? And then when you live from that place, you don't experience this world as a trap or as stuck or as some illusion. It's like it's a real lived experience that I get to be the extension of the kingdom of the Most High. And what an honor. I'm going to treat this as sacred, just as in the Bible it says God created the heavens and the earth. Well, it doesn't say God created the heavens and the earth are just, it's kind of crappy or is less than. It's all equally holy. In Gnosticism, there's a really strong duality between physical and non-physical. There is not that duality in the God of the Bible. Heaven and hell. This is an interesting one. So, has anyone here looked into the near-death experience phenomenon? No? Yes? Yeah, okay. So, there are 300 peer-reviewed studies published on near-death experiences that were confirmed this person actually died. Not only did they die, while they were dead, they saw things in the room that they were in or in other rooms that confirmed they were actually out of their body, not in just a realm of their own imagination. For example, they'd go into another room and one guy saw some guy step on like a tack and puncture his foot, and then go and put a Band-Aid on it. Now, he was confirmed already dead, and he saw his name tag. He was able to remember his name. So when they come back, they're able to say, oh, well, yeah, while I was dead, I saw this, this, and that. And they go, okay, well, we can't disprove that you actually experienced what you said you experienced. Now we have over 300 of these. Now some experience heaven, some experience what you might call hell. Now, what is hell in their experience? Because I'm not going to pretend I have some ultimate answer to heaven and hell. I'm just going on people's direct experience that I find really intriguing. And then, of course, what the Bible says, but the Bible is so vague, it leaves it really open to interpretation, in my opinion. People would be in some sort of, fiery, scary kind of thing. And then the moment they said, Jesus, help me, at the speed of thought, it changed. or God help me, or they started praying. I mean, at literally the speed of thought, it changed. And they all got a lesson from it. They go, oh, wait a second. This is what I was creating. Like one person had this, like, they're just kind of alone. And then they realized, oh, this is what I did in my life. I isolated myself in my life. So think about in the physical reality, in this physical world, it takes a while for things to be created, right? It's like if I want to create a table, let's say I got to go chop down a tree and do all these things. In spirit, where it's not physical, things happen almost at the speed of thought. So when I, my transition from physical to non-physical, if I'm holding on to, man, I'm just not worthy, I'm alone, I deserve punishment, where am I? Just like the entity thing, what kind of agreement field am I in? I'm probably going to be in that experience. But that's not because God's punishing you. That's because God is just. That's a perfect system. You're going to get what you're available for. You're going to reap what you sow. But the moment it's like, oh wait, I need help. Jesus Christ, help me. And the stories are profound because almost every time the people are bawling in tears, and it's like this light comes in, everything flees, and this hand comes, and you're pulled into this realm of light and love and forgiveness, and you have this weeping, and then there's a life review, and the life review isn't you being punished for your sins. It shows you how you punished yourself by your sins. It's like, oh, remember, and they all describe it the same way. They couldn't pretend. There's no pretending at that level. So you're kind of just confronted with yourself in a really intense way where no stone is left unturned. Every choice that you make, you're starting to feel more. You even feel, this is reported with a lot of them, you feel what other people felt based on the consequences of your actions. So it's like if I lied to someone or attacked someone, I'll also feel how it impacted them because again, it's about learning. The same way that German New Medicine, where does German New Medicine finally lead us? Oh, learning. Every symptom is a window into my psyche and the conflict that is keeping me out of my authentic design. So it's all about learning. It's the same thing at this level. So when you have a life review, you're really confronted with yourself, but the overwhelming stories, and again, these are anecdotes. I'm not saying this is ultimate truth, but I think it's really compelling that there's over 300 of them that have all this evidence that no, this wasn't just created in their head. Um, that they can, all of this is happening, and Jesus is just holding them in pure, unconditional love and comfort. I remember looking through some of these cases and then having this thought one night, Jesus, if you really are this forgiving, show me. And I go to sleep and I wake up in a dream and I'm like in my apartment and Jesus is just like hanging out, kind of like leaning like he's like one of the boys. And I'm like lucid. I'm like, Jesus. I was like, like Jesus. I mean, Jesus, like, I'm sorry for this and that. He's like, it's okay. And then I tried to apologize again and he cut me off. He's like, it's okay. You're forgiven. Like I couldn't even get it out. And it was like this nonchalant thing. And I'm over here like, what? And I remember waking up and like tears running down my face. There will be a live replay. So if Jesus revealed God not to be a punisher, an eternal hell doesn't make sense. You know what makes sense? Giving you what you're agreeing to until you choose something different. And having infinite grace and love right here, always trying to get to you, but also letting you choose how you are going to define or identify yourself, because that's what unconditional love actually is. Look, I love you so much. I'm going to let you believe you're not loved. I'm going to let you have that because you are going to learn and grow from it. And then when you realize you are loved, the way you're going to slingshot from that darkness into the light is going to send thousands to flight. So when it says eternal, I'm just giving you my point of view, okay? When it says eternal, it's like, yeah, there's no time limit on how long I can believe I'm a piece of crap. Or I'm not worthy, or I'm this or I'm that, right? I can choose to believe that for eternity. So this is my and just my interpretation of, okay, you're going to be, in an eternal hell with gnashing of teeth and whatnot. It's like, yes, as long as I'm agreeing to who I'm not, I'm going to keep experiencing that. But what's more relevant is how you're already experiencing it now. There's a here-ness and now-ness to the gospel. It's not about being saved from the afterlife. That's a distortion of the early church fathers. That was never their intention. They weren't spreading the message of, we're all finally saved from hell. They weren't spreading that message. They were spreading the message of Christ has defeated death and darkness. And through him, you can too. And you can live it now. The kingdom is upon us. That's the message. That's the here-ness and now-ness. This might be all I got. Last thing I'll say is the relationship with Jesus, relationship over religion. Um, there's a and I felt this before, but there's an emphasis on uh what makes someone what I would say a true follower of Christ is they realize that Christ didn't come to establish a religion. And the basis of other religions are, a lot of them are the legal code or the philosophical point of view. This is about a person. So that has to come first. And in that relationship, there's such a loving exchange that by the Spirit, these things become more obvious to you. These things you can interpret scripture, the teachings in a way that you previously couldn't in that confined and constricted kind of separate state. So we just, and I'll say, at least for me, is the relationship aspect. It's not my job to judge you if I think you don't have an authentic relationship with Christ. You see this online all the time. You don't know Jesus. And it's like, no one knows. It's not, it's not our job to be vigilant to the lack in others. It's our job to do that for ourselves. And then we walk with open hands. And if you want to walk with me, great. And if not, great. Okay, I'll do one more. So I'm getting a little. I need some food. Can you talk about the nuance of free will and co-creating with God in terms of manifesting? Is manifesting all done from lack? Yeah, so this is interesting. I don't at this point, I don't ever think, oh, I need to manifest something. That's just not even on my mind. I have what I want is what I have. So when I move in the direction of something, I'm doing it for its own sake, for the joy of it, for the inspiration, the excitement of it, just like this series. And that actually that's the reward. Because and here's the paradox, people that live from that place over and over end up living in radical abundance. I mean, since my heart was remade in Jesus, my income is, and you've seen this happen, babe, maybe quadrupled. All of my health stuff resolved. Now, I'm not saying that's just because of Jesus. It was the combination of Jesus, which was the foundation, absolute foundation. But then the book of life, understanding biology, completely changing my relationship to my body. And then identifying, oh, I have this thing called an unconscious mind, and it's still disagreeing with God about certain things. That's why these conditions are here. So then the application of the inquiry process, which is to bring those to my awareness so I could bring them to the light, so I could bring them to the purifier and see the truth. And so combination of that is what happened. But one side effect, I say that to say, I don't ever think, okay, okay, well, I'm going to manifest this and I'm going to manifest that and my effort, and then I'm going to get the manifest. Like, I don't even go there. I'll say, in short, you reap what you sow is a really simple and profound teaching. So if I'm coming from abundance, what will I reap? If I'm coming from passion and inspiration, what will I reap? Probably whatever I need in order to continue to have passion and inspiration in my life. Probably whatever I need to keep abundance in my life. Now, my job, and I'll slip up with this sometimes, my job is not to insist that it needs to show up just as a certain amount of money or this or that. That's where we start to try to play God. Yeah, Tyler. So the book of God is just a name for nature and in a sense biology. That's just the old world term for it. The book of life is through studying life, you could say the sciences, which essentially came from the Bible, the scientific method. You can see how God designed life, which reveals his handiwork, which that writing of the biology, is the book, so to say, the design. Okay, any other questions? I think we hit all of the right things. The Book of Mormon. I mean, I think Mormonism is not true. I think the book is not true. I mean, here's the thing: where is the actual original tablet? There were some people that said they saw it, but it's never been produced, and it's not like this is something from antiquity, from thousands of years ago. That's number one, and number two, it's just at complete odds with the message of Christ. Okay, I'm still confused about the Holy Spirit. It says the light, which is Christ, has been in all of humanity since the beginning. So we've never actually been separated. Yep. We never actually been separated. Christians say we need to confess with our mouths that Christ died for us to reconnect us to God, but we've never been separated, only in our minds. Yes, I mean, that's true. I do believe that's true. But here's the thing: someone can sit there and claim, oh, I'm not separated from God. I know it. Well, again, go watch your fruits. Go see if that's actually in your heart. Now, I believe Jesus dying on the cross is a way into the heart. And as in fact, his demonstration, I would say, is the only way. Because again, no one's lived like Christ. There is no other Christ. There's no one that's lived a sinless life that did what he did. That's actually historical. That's not some sort of mythological poetry. So if we're going to get the demonstration of truth, who does it have to come from? First, it has to come through some sort of human or something we can observe at least. But if someone's going to give us, this is who you are, this is what it means to be human, this is what it looks like, this is how God feels about you, it has to come from the most just person, most just, most innocent, most high, right? So you could say the purest form of teaching has to come from Jesus because it's synonymous with God. Does that make sense? Chloe.
Hi, I'm still having some trouble
Mm-hmm.
with like the whole spiritual warfare, and I know you touched on that, but from my background, like I come from this apostolic Pentecostal, very charismatic, very into like everything's demonic kind of thing. And so like the scriptures from Ephesians 6:12, like we don't struggle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, authorities, cosmic powers of darkness. And then First Peter 5:8 about being sober-minded and alert, for our adversary, the devil, is like a roaring lion looking for anyone he can devour. So I'm just trying to like, and then you said about not resisting because that just causes them to come at you even more.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to find the connection, I guess, between those
No,
two.
totally. Well, just let me ask you this. When you're in worship, for example, do you have a direct experience of spiritual war happening simultaneously? And I'm talking about a moment in worship where you really feel the love of God penetrate you. Is there warfare in that moment that you're experiencing?
No.
No. So what is present?
Love,
Mm-hmm.
peace, a sound mind,
Yeah.
fruits of the spirit.
Yeah. So that is your authentic self. That's how you're designed. There's no war possible in that there, right? Now, what's the difference? When I feel like maybe there's warfare happening, I'm probably not in that place,
Mm.
right? So there's always going to be an agreement. Now, what takes me out of that place? I'm not enough. I'm bad. I'm wrong, right? Some sort of disagreement with how God sees me revealed through Jesus, some sort of disagreement. So my job is just to see what takes me out and question it, right? And then and then go back to God. It doesn't mean we get addicted to worship. It just means we now have an actual, almost like thing to measure against, right? So we just have to ask ourselves, yeah, we're at war. Essentially, we're at war with the spiritual, the non-physical. But what's also non-physical is what my thoughts are non-physical. My thinking and believing. And those can be influenced, and they actually are being influenced by, other forces. But I ultimately, with my free will, I've been given free will, can choose to believe it or not. So this is just where we're supposed to guard our mind and thoughts about what we're believing to be true. And that is like the sticking point. That's what will hook me in to a kind of spiritual warfare experience, as if I'm believing about me what the enemy is believing about me. Then we're really, or if I'm fighting for my life, think of it this way. If I'm fighting for my life, I'm afraid of losing my life, right? Or I'm afraid of dying, or I'm afraid of feeling powerless. And the you in worship, it's like there is none of that. Your life is not your own anyway, right? So again, we have to come into some form of the fallen state to be susceptible to really any kind of experience of suffering. So instead of trying to win the battle of, who I'm battling or what I'm battling out there, we're going to what's at the root in here. And my job is to reconcile and forgive. And then there's no agreement that's occurring. Right? It's like sin is the license for me to be, easily influenced by outside sources, but I did the influence first. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Chloe. Sweetheart.
Yeah, I just feel like there's not enough nuance about this conversation in the Christian spaces. There's so much emphasis on the enemy is outside of you, the enemy is outside of you, and not enough like exploration of what's happening inside. And I really love Damon Thompson's perspective on this. Um, it's not an exact quote, but it's like he's like, I'm too busy being in my beloved identity to fight spiritual warfare.
That's exactly
And
right.
yeah, it's like I think that is the evolution of Christianity because I grew up in a household where my mom was telling me all the time, yeah, the enemy is always trying to attack you, da 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 da. Do you know how freaking terrifying that is to live in that reality and disempowering? Um, and yeah, I just feel like the older versions of Christianity take it verbatim.
Mhm.
And to your point, I don't believe it. I don't buy into it.
Yeah. Yep. And, we also, thanks, babe. We also, the ego, which you could really just say is the survival brain, the biological animal brain, is always trying to protect you. That's its job. We are wired to be a little more negative than positive in terms of our survival. So there also is truth to, there is a force that is trying to protect you. And sometimes it protects you by saying, uh, you're not, good enough to go date someone, but it's not because you're not good enough. It's because you're afraid of being rejected, but you're self-devaluing, or you're scared of something, or you're uh, collapsing. But all of this is coming from a form of self-protection. But if we don't know that and we're existing within it, it's like, man, I'm being attacked, or like there's always going to be something. And there is a little truth to that, in the sense that if I have unresolved conflict shocks, especially, my brain is designed to avoid ever repeating it happening again. And it will do anything to persuade me not to be my authentic self. Because last time I did, I got abandoned, shocked, rejected. So we also just have to understand that even if there is this a lived experience, I'm not placing it outside, just inside of dialogue, our internal talk that um, seems like even just self-attack. There's actually a good reason for that. And that's something you take on a case-by-case basis. Who are your recommendations for GNM to learn more? I humbly recommend myself. You can also, Andy Lockmere is great. LearningGNM.com is great. Yeah, I would say, look, work on creating a relationship and resolving the devil in here between your two ears. I'm not enough. I'm this, I'm that. Before you worry about anything out there. Okay. Thank you, Chloe. Okay. Any other question?
Brandon, may I ask a question?
Yep.
In the very beginning, and I can rewatch this, you said something about identity, state,
Mhm.
and you gave it in an order. You said something, you explained it, and then you said it in an order. Can you repeat that?
Mhm.
And then you made a pretty strong statement that transformation happens when you transform the identity,
Mhm.
and that all of these other tools are useful, but in context of getting you there.
Mhm.
Can you expand a little bit more on the process of really touching the identity and the importance of labeling it properly? So the
Mhm.
difference between I'm not good enough versus fear of rejection or inadequacy. What's the
Yeah.
importance
Yeah.
of that? Thank you.
Okay. Really good. So any identity, it's a sound, right? If I say I'm not good enough, I'm making a sound. But if that sound is the touching the actual identity, the part of my brain that's been affected by it, which we can see on CT scans, will start to have a reaction. And then typically the organ that's being impacted by it does too. A lot of my clients know this, that when we're in sessions and we're working on something really specific like their digestion, they can just start saying a couple things. All of a sudden their guts start moving and turning a little bit. Well, this is the psyche, brain, organ connection, all one thing. So I'm listening for the identity that is bringing emotion to the surface that's been being suppressed, and there's some physical reaction. It's less about the word and more about the energy and what it's pointing to, the resonance of it, that is causing something unconscious to come to the surface. So the words are less important, but for example, when someone says, I'm afraid to be rejected, that's not an identity, that's a fear. So if we go a layer deeper, it's like, what happens if someone rejects me? What would that mean or say about me? Well, that's going to expose the identity. Oh, that I'm not enough. So right in that moment, you realize your source of enoughness has been through getting someone's acceptance. And when you bring that to the surface, which has probably been there since 2 years old, like a hum, like a musical note in the background you've never noticed, just repeat, 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 repeat. You are literally kind of being reborn in that moment. You're zooming out and going, oh my God, I've believed this my whole life and I couldn't even see it. And there's typically an entire cascade of emotion and release because it creates pain. There's a lot of sadness there. There's grief there, right? When we realize we believe a lie about ourselves and then we let it go. This is why also coming to Christ is so emotional, because we're releasing so much stored emotion as our identity changes. So it's less about the actual words and it's about what they're pointing to. Number one, identity is, they're usually very simple, but it's that core. It's like, if I am, and I'm not adding anything onto it, if I'm me, if I am, once I add something on it that negates the truth of who I am, that's an identity, right? So it's like, God didn't give you a spirit of fear. What does that, what's the opposite of fear? Love, could be joy, right? The fruits of the spirit. So it's like, okay, if that's authentic to me, where I negate it is an identity. So if I'm just bad, or I am not loved, then that identity is going to produce emotion. So when I experience something and I filter it through that identity, there's emotion, and then there's beliefs and thoughts, and then there's identity, and then there's beliefs. So I can create beliefs about the world. Well, if I'm not loved, my belief is I get love through a relationship. That's a belief. That's not an identity. So now I have my beliefs. Then I have emotions. Hey, I got that relationship. Now I feel loved. Having this emotion because I have this relationship means I'm loved, right? And then we have our thoughts, our more conscious thoughts, the things that are happening consciously, and our actions. So everything kind of flows out. This is how kind of like our free will manifests itself. This is why in the work that I do with GNM is I look at the symptom, and it tells me a lot about the core identity. So then we, through inquiry, get there and resolve or reconcile it. Okay, I'm gonna do one more question. I'm gonna respond to, let me just scroll up. There was one up here that's good. Ian, I think it was yours. Oh man, it's way up here now. Okay. What about exploring sacred sexuality through Ista? I feel God there, and I feel myself without words to reconcile this with the biblical's view on sexual immorality. Yeah, this is great. So, and I'm just going to give you my view. I'm not here to give anyone moral absolutes or anything like that. This is my personal view, is that sex has the potential to create a child, right? To bring us a soul into form. And so if I'm not absolutely ready to be devoted to this person for the rest of my life, I'm not going to do it, because it is a primary biological intention of sex, just based on biology. It's meant to reproduce. No mammal has sex with a woman or has sex with another mammal, gets the mammal pregnant, and then just leaves for good. There's always some form, even if it's in a pack, some form of, we're going to bond for a certain amount of time, even if there's, again, a pack. So you just have to ask the question. This is also energy before form. Where is it coming from? There's nothing wrong. Pleasure is pleasure. Nerves are just nerves. I can't make pleasure turn on or off. It's neutral. There's no good or bad with pleasure. It's just what the body does. So why am I here? Am I doing it to get anything or go anywhere? Am I doing it to get to God even? Or again, is there some sort of passion and more, you could even say impersonal form of inspiration there? For me personally, once I realized, oh, having a child is like creating a living church. My devotion to God through Christ and how I'm led to lead, how I'm inspired to lead in the world is the foundation of the household. And now I pour all of that. My job is to take the relationship I have with Christ and love Natalie the same way that I love God in Christ. And then when we come together and have sex and we have children, which we have a child on the way, my job is to reproduce the image of Christ in that child. And that child now, because of where they're living from, is going to inherit leadership positions in the world. And that's not because they're, it's not like an arrogance thing or a pride thing. It's like when you see someone living from passion and love, people call that leadership, right? If you see someone and they're a master at their craft, they're usually passionate. They're usually coming from love. That doesn't happen always too. We have a really interesting world, but the people that are, rare. And it's felt. Everyone can feel that. So for me, it's like if sex is used to reproduce the image of Jesus through children, through multiplication, it's far more, it's so sacred, but in a selfless sense. It's sacred because of what it's going to do to reproduce the truth, the kingdom through us. And I think there's something really special about, man, when I actually focus all of my sexual energy on you, I have to be confronted with my animal nature. And so does Natalie, so would anyone. So there's a kind of, I'm not a huge fan of this word, but I will use it, kind of like a purification of when I commit to loving you the same way that Christ loved the church and putting it all into one person. Man, anything, I'm not free, I'm not this, anything that I think I could get from the world ends up starving, and I'm now forced to reconcile and grow. And I've just personally found that much more rewarding than any other alternative.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've also noticed there's times where Natalie and I are in such deep worship where we would actually have to come down to have sex. We'd have to come down because it's so profound that even some of the most beautiful moments we've had sexually, I'd still have to come down from this, like, where it's like, it almost feels like it's a little incompatible in the sense that, like, there's no urge in me to have sex. I mean, when I'm on my knees, in the presence of the Lord, it's like, for me, I haven't felt anything greater than that. And so I always, when like checks and balances, I will always go there first and then make a decision on, oh, do I want to have sex with Natalie right now because I want to get something, or because I'm truly connected and I want to love her? Yeah, right. Does that make sense? All right. Wow, y'all remained on here. That is epic. What a great call. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for all your questions. I mean, what a range we covered today. This is the last of the series. Look out for an email. We are starting, you're so welcome. We are starting the circle round 3. What's cool about this one is I haven't officially done the rename yet, but it's going to be called Bio Logos. Bio, life, Logos, the word, but also God revealed through our biology. So everything that we went through here, we're going to go a bit deeper in for the first 3 sessions of the circle. And then you get a German New Medicine curriculum where you can understand how biology actually works, how to resolve conflicts, which, we've had people heal constipation, be healed from or healed of what else? Fibroids in their womb. One woman, I just put it up, she was 8 weeks late to menstruate. And after a 30-minute call, she got her menstruation came back. We've had people heal like total body skin rashes, hemorrhoids. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So you get that curriculum of understanding essentially how God designed our biology, which, by the way, if you really get it, and some of y'all on here, see, here's Ian. There you go. That's amazing, Ian. My ulcerative colitis is like 90% healed. That's repentant. Yeah, it's beautiful. So, y'all know that have been in the circle on here. If you really get GNM, are you afraid of symptoms anymore? Are you afraid of getting sick? All of that's gone. It's a whole new world. So there's a lot of revelation available with this body of work that I think is absolutely profound. Even, like in the Bible, it says the two will become one flesh. That's a real thing in GNM. My organs and Natalie's organs actually recognize each other and change our brain. We are literally starting to share flesh. So I do some crossover like that. That's really cool. And then the last 3 is the somatic inquiry. And all that's doing is going, okay, we're going to find those identities. We're going to go to these shocking moments in your life where a certain identity formed. You traded your design, your authentic design as designed by God. You've traded it for safety. You've traded it for validation. And this is the identity. And we'll have those vulnerable, authentic openings that allow for healing to actually occur. It's a 3-month journey. There's 9 sessions. We go the first 3 Saturdays of each month. We take the last Saturday off for if y'all miss a call, you could just have time to process and integrate. It's starting February 8th is the first session. And then we're going for 3 months. Everyone here, this is just my gift to you, gets a discount. The normal price is $3,100. The early bird is $2,100. For everyone here, it's $1,900. And there's a payment plan that starts off at I think this might depend on your credit, but like $160 a month. I try to make it really affordable. So that's an option. Look out for the email. I'll be sending that out. Well, I might as well I'll just post a link here because I have it up right here. Where are you? And we have some circle members in the house as we speak. Here we go. Okay, this is kind of funny. Disclaimer. I'm sending this link. Now YouTube is taking really long for me to edit out the very beginning. So it might not be edited and you might see me sit there for a second going, oh, and like having a moment. I don't know. I haven't checked it yet, but I don't mind. So just check that out. And if you have any questions, reach out, look out for the email, and I will see y'all when I see y'all. Awesome. All right. See you guys.